In today's video, I'm going to share my personal journey of discovering psychotherapy and making it work for me. I'm going to distill for you, step by step, why it helped me, how it helped me, and what exactly I learned in my personal therapy. If you're new here, my name is Dr. Cheng and I am a licensed psychologist. I have a PhD from Columbia University and I have been studying and practicing psychotherapy for the last 18 years. First of all, I would like to encourage you to think of psychotherapy as a participatory art. It is not enough to simply show up. There is an individualized learning curve in understanding how it works in general and how it works for you. And for those of us who didn't grow up with the therapy culture, the learning curve might be steeper. Such was my story. I grew up in China in the 1980s, and therapy was not part of our culture. When I got accepted to the PhD program to study counseling psychology, I treated psychotherapy as a way of making a respectable living while serving others. I was 27 and I thought I had my whole life planned out. Never had it crossed my mind that I myself at some point would need the help of psychotherapy. Fast forward to the last year of my doctoral program. I was struggling both in life and at the internship program. My boss at the time essentially mandated that I receive personal therapy. I was embarrassed, my pride was hurt, but I needed to graduate, so I complied. Lucky me, I was assigned to this amazing Indian American psychologist who was exactly what I needed at the time. Even though I was very grumpy about being required to get therapy, I continued, mostly because I liked her a lot. To be honest, I don't remember a single comment she made or any specific interventions she used in the therapy sessions. But I do remember how she made me feel. Understood, appreciated, and cared for. One thing I learned about myself during that period of psychotherapy is that I had a lot of unresolved anger and resentment towards my parents. At the same time, interestingly, I was fiercely protective of my parents, including in therapy. Another thing I learned about myself is that I had a very passive communication style, especially when it comes to communicating with authority figures. So bosses, supervisors, parental figures. I could be fuming inside, but I didn't have either the nerve or the skill to communicate my feelings and experiences with them. Interestingly, none of these points were made explicit to me during the sessions themselves. It is often when I was in between sessions thinking about what I had already told my therapist that these learning points came to me naturally and spontaneously. When I look back at that experience, I understood it as having a therapeutic rapport with my therapist. And this stuff is pure gold. Therapeutic rapport is a deep sense of trust. It's a safety net that you can say anything, express any thoughts or feelings to your therapist, and those thoughts and feelings will be met with kindness, compassion, curiosity, rather than judgment or criticism. And that is what makes therapy work across different therapeutic approaches or different schools of thoughts within psychotherapy. The second set of my personal therapy experience came about 2 years after I gave birth to my second child. At that time, I was living in a small town. I was feeling constantly overwhelmed, unmotivated, and exhausted. My PCP recommended therapy. Unfortunately, this period of psychotherapy was much less satisfying than the first round of psychotherapy. Sometimes the dissatisfaction came from a lack of responsiveness I felt in session. It was as if I was speaking to the air and I really didn't know what my therapist was thinking. Other times, the dissatisfaction came from an acute sense of mismatch between myself and my therapist. Most of my therapists came from vastly different cultural, linguistic, and ethnic background than mine. When I look back at those experiences now, I understand that despite the best intentions of my therapist, what was missing at the time was our fit. In particular, our cultural fit. I was looking for someone who was more active in sessions. I was looking for someone who understands my culture, my immigration history, because those were important pieces of my personal identity. However, I was not getting any of those. And when I say this, I don't mean that you should always be looking for therapists whose cultural background matches exactly yours. In fact, for most people, that's not feasible at all. What I do mean is that you should be looking for a therapist who is culturally competent, someone who's open, who is curious, who is demonstrating an effort to get to know important pieces of your personal identity. Despite my dissatisfactions about the therapy experience I had during this period of my life, I still walked away with a few reflection points on myself and my life. For one, I learned that I was feeling quite lonely, unsupported, and bitter about functioning as a single parent. The other thing I learned about myself was that I was feeling really ambivalent about decisions I've made earlier in my life, such as becoming a therapist, getting married, having children. I felt like I was trapped in what seems to be irreversible commitments I had made earlier in my life, and I didn't know how to get out of them. None of these reflections or learnings came to me during therapy. They were never made explicit to me during therapy. However, therapy kept me sort of talking about myself, my story, reflecting, processing, and generally curious and compassionate about myself to allow for these reflections. Fast forward to the spring of 2024. I had a breakup, and I realized I was grieving a little longer than I had expected. I realized that I might need a little extra help again. And this time, I didn't need any external push or nudge. I went ahead and sought therapy myself. In some ways, I was becoming a more informed and savvy consumer of psychotherapy myself. This time, I interviewed and trial worked with a few therapists before I find my best fit. She is Korean American, she understands my cultural background, and she always seems to have my best interest in mind. It took a while for me to trust her, but once we crossed that threshold, it really felt like therapy has begun. To this date, we're still meeting on a regular basis. This last period of psychotherapy taught me two things. Number one, I have a tendency to overextend myself in relationships, sometimes to my own detriment. Number two, while it is important to trust others, trust should be earned rather than given indiscriminately. And unlike my previous therapy experience, these patterns were promptly and explicitly identified and pointed out to me by my therapist. We discussed it, we explored it, we agreed upon it, and I was held accountable for changing them. When I look back at my work with this therapist, I understand that our focus has been on my behavior patterns and repetitions. As one of my supervisors, Dr. Amy Taylor, used to say, instead of life just happening to me and everything is based on chance, what is my role in my personal dilemma? What behaviors and patterns am I repeating? This personal accountability and resolve to change are essential to the effectiveness of psychotherapy. So how do all of this sound to you? Are you excited to start your own personal journey? In my next video, I'm going to give you a detailed tutorial on how to find your ideal therapist and how to make therapy work for you. See you there.